Permaculture is a holistic, integrated design and implementation system for a sustainable future. School of Thought, it more or less was founded by two Australian gentlemen in the late 70s, and it's a global school at this point in time. There's classes that are offered. We're actually offering a class there this summer, 7 weekends over the course of the year, which the Permaculture is the theme. And so you can get this design certification, and I've never taken the class, but I've participated in various classes and read up on it a good deal. But more or less, yeah, it's a design school. So what it enables you to do is really take a design approach to all these different components that you'll see here. You know, everything from the physical stuff, from the infrastructure to the economic structure to the social structure, the getting along type stuff. But yeah, you take all these different components, solar panels and pigs and chickens and people, and, the different infrastructures that we have here, and try to get them to work together as best we can. As far as our food and our food security, what we aim to do is have, within reason, food that's grown locally throughout the year. So at some point in time, we felt like growing greens and greenhouse stuff year-round, like having fresh food year-round, is unsustainable at this climate. Like when the ground freezes around here, it freezes hard. Hard. Like it'll freeze well into this greenhouse. And so at that point, if you're trying to have fresh greens, you're looking at heating the whole of Mother Earth. You know? It needs to be a seasonal diet based on what's available when it's available. So this time of year, we've gone moved into the root crops, potatoes, or the hard squash, the winter squash, pumpkins and butternuts, and those sort of squash, as opposed to in the middle of summer, it's summer squash and beans and greens. But the idea is, it's December 1st in New Hampshire. Yeah, that's snow falling from the sky. We don't have any heat in here, and we're growing our own food. That's the kind of stability I think you really need. Otherwise, if your diet's based on the avocados and the bananas and the things that are, you know, put up in a freezer somewhere, then you don't have that real sustainability or that security. You're dependent on things that are far away and dependent on things that are made with a lot of infrastructure. Instead of, you know, eating greens 8-9 months out of the year and then having storage crops that you can store in a root cellar, or like the winter squash, you can just store in your upstairs closets where we got ours. Don't tell anybody. But our wealth is in our upstairs closet. But it's a real different way of looking at things too in terms of wealth and so forth. Like, are you better off with a bunch of money in the bank, or are you better off with a bunch of squash in your closet? No, but seriously, I mean, really, what's that money? What you gonna buy with that money? Food? At DAcres, we use a variety of alternative and renewable energy systems. This includes a wood gasification boiler that heats water for domestic usage and space heating. We cook and preserve food using the cob oven, sun ovens, as well as traditional wood cook stoves. In addition, for applications of hot water, we can utilize the evacuated tubes and flat panels located on the roof of the community building. To augment our electrical production, we have a 15-panel array of photovoltaics that tracks the sun. All these systems combine to limit our consumption of fossil fuels while providing energy. it's combining all these systems, these natural systems, and this biology, biodiversity.
Biodiversity is encouraged versus the conventional industrial monoculture approach to food production systems. Biodiversity strengthens and builds resilience in the food production system.
You're mixing in the pigs, the animal element, and what we do in here in the summertime is bring them weeds. Like all the weeds that we come up from the garden go right in here. So that system, that cycle develops. And then the pigs are pooping and the water's flowing down across on this slope and it is fertilizing this area right down here that we're going to be using for gardening. And then we got a little pond right here flowing water down there that's coming out of the ground. It's all designed from, there's a pipe all the way up by the roadside by where the chipper is. That we strung the pipe underground, you know, right below the frost line. And it supplies the fresh water that feeds this pond and that pond below. So it accomplishes two purposes. Keeps the roadway dry and gives us a concentrated source of fresh water.
Natural systems are developed through observations and intentional mimicry of nature's designs. Recognition and utilization of natural systems include waterworks, weather patterns, and fertilization through biologically rich compost.
First concept I'd like to look at is just to try to take this whole place and look at it from like as if you were a hawk or something flying up above like 400 feet. How this farm is designed is relation to what's south, where the water's running, and just all the where the wind generally blows from is very, very important to how you're going to design the landscape and work with the landscape. It's the big problems that you see in America, like with subdivisions and so forth. They'll put a house direction based on its street appeal, and so the house right there is just losing a lot of energy from the sun just because it's set so it looks good from the street.
Through active observation and site analysis, a permaculture design can optimize the landscape for sustainability.
Rototiller and plowing and everything have very effective results when they're trying to take over the prairies and large-scale agriculture, you know? And it has short-term rewards, plowing does. It churns up the soil and it creates a lot of flourish of bacterial activity that supplies energy to the root system. It's the bacteria eat up the organic material in rapid fashion because they got exposed to a lot of air. And so there's a lot of food for plants the first year. But after that, there's less and less dividends for every time you plow and every time you disturb the soil. Whereas with something like this, where we're adding organic material on top, and we're incorporating the existing organic material that's there, then you're building. So the idea is, you know, you get into a spot where the grass is really thick, and you're either going to be trying to pull this stuff out forever, or you can cut it down to the ground and use the grass, go feed the pigs with that, and then put some cardboard on top of it. Getting rid of dandelion without pulling the dandelion. So you're incorporating all that biomass into the soil right there. And the earthworms and everything are having their way with it in a productive way, rather than if you took a rototiller to something like this. It's hard work, it's hard on the machine, and you're just going to be spreading the root systems of, say, quackgrass. And you're just turning it up, so it just comes right back. It's coming back as a weed, probably worse than if you hadn't turned it up. This process takes something called patience. You're building in the top down, much like the prairies of the United States were formed. They were formed by eons of prairie grass growing up 3, 4, 5 feet and then falling over for the winter. And growing up and falling over. That's building soil. When you come in and use a plow or a rototiller and expose the soil to wind and air, you know, the air creates the flourish and microbial activity, and then the rain, you get erosion. And that's what's going on. This is the big problem with industrial agriculture, is we kill soil.
Sustainable agriculture is the process of building soil.
It's all about using the resource. This solar-driven farm is based on the woods, the forest. If you were living along the ocean, you know, it'd be based on the oceanic plant life. Basically, you're turning biomass from one form into another. So we're going to use these wood chips right here to make vegetables. Bring this out every morning from underneath the oxen, and they've peed on it, and they've pooped on it, and they've stepped on it, and they mixed in their hay with it. You can see it, it's all right there, right? This is our primo compost right here, right? This is stage 1. It's bam. What do we got here? This is stage 2. This is the stage where things really start to heat up, and you might be able to see a little heat emanating off. It's not super hot. And most of what's going on here is really, this white stuff is evidence. You know, really small microscopic things are going on right here. And then, as you get further down here, this is like stage 3 or 4. And this is where it's starting to look more like dirt. And in here now we have worms. So you can see the worms going bananas in this stuff. And they're making this, the 3rd stage, is turning this stuff into soil. You can't really tell what this was. You know, this could have been seaweed, this could have been coffee grounds. There's still some woody material in there, but it's more or less broken down. And it doesn't smell anymore, it's more or less smells like a forest floor. And that's what we're looking for.
See what more was in there?
This is the cob oven, and it's that material, once again, just clay, sand, and straw. And you mix everything all together wet in the right proportions. It's like 30% clay and 70% sand, and then you add as much straw to it as you can. And that straw acts is more or less like the rebar, and the sand's like your rocks, and the clay is that elastic that holds it all together. It's really energy efficient. You just use firewood, which is in itself solar energy. And the real beauty of it, it retains the heat. It's once again one of these physics properties, thermal mass. Once you heat something like this up, it's like a pizza oven or a brick-fired oven. The structure itself is not your conventional building. You know, you probably don't have any of these on campus. But it's something that we could build from the land and from renewable resources for the most part. You know, where all the glazing came from. You know, the dump. We just go and get it there. And then these we milled up at the neighbors, but they're from the land. And then these, like this is the same to me as this, except for this is stronger and took less energy. All I had to do was strip it. Like with this, it had to go down the road to go to the mill and run through the mill 4 times. It's nice because you can fit things tight to it, but if you don't need to, go with the round wood. Stronger, you can do it yourself. So you're getting that benefit. And then this whole thing is not, like, what is it? It looks sort of like concrete. Cob. It's clay, sand, and straw. And also adobe. If you make blocks of it, and it'll form and stuff, that's adobe. That's how adobe's built in the Southwest. But this is just cob. It's an English, like England technique. So, because we speak English, that's what we usually call it. But more or less, you make this stuff up wet. You put in 30% clay, 70% sand, and all this straw. and then you just mix it all together. People mix it with their feet, they dance in it and stuff like that. It's like a, you know, like a dance party. And then you put it on the wall and stack it up, and you can sculpt with it, you see. And it's really got a good thermal mass to it, and as long as it stays dry, it'll stay there forever. So as long as you got good boots and a good hat, it'll stay there a long time. And it is non-toxic. Where does it come from? From, you know, from you and a shovel is where you can get it, and that's pretty decent as far as a building material.
At DAcres, tree houses utilize the natural resource of the northern forest to provide housing. Using recycled and on-site materials, a treehouse can be constructed in short order for a few $100s, creating comfortable housing mortgage-free. These humble abodes provide privacy to residents, while common facilities like the kitchen, laundry, and bathrooms are shared. Some residents stay year-round in a treehouse, though generally they are utilized from March until November.
Here we are in the basement, and there's a couple different things happening. One's this composting toilet. So the key advantage of this is you don't flush 2 gallons of drinking water every time you use the bathroom. Fecal phobia is a big thing, and definitely speaking, you know, there's a lot of history to that sort of Black Plague stuff. You know, when there was no sanitation system and people were just throwing it out into the street. It's dangerous stuff if it's not treated correctly. I mean, I'm not wanting to reach in here and take a big handful and stick it in my mouth, but I'm not scared to use a pitchfork on it. We definitely have good access to the material. You know, you just lift this up and wheelbarrow it right out of here. Really happy with that. But, you know, proper treatment doesn't mean a septic system. To say that that could be so standardized, and that's the perfection of poop treatment, would be, it's just unreasonable. You know, a concrete vault in your backyard, that's the pyramid of evolution on wastewater management? I don't think so. I think there's got to be different biological systems that we could develop that would reutilize this important resource. Here we have our vegetable oil. This is what we go to the restaurant and get. If they have a fryer, you know, they're cooking French fries or they're making veggie tempura or whatever, we use that oil when they're done with it in our engines for a truck, and we have a chipper, the diesel engine. And it's really neat as far as, you know, just the history of things as well. I'm not sure everyone realizes that the diesel engine was invented to run on peanut oil. It was invented so that the small farmer could produce his own fuel to work his equipment. And right about that time, you know, right around 1900, they also started discovering they could stick a pipe in the ground and get oil. And so, which is easier to do at that point, you know, just stick a pipe in the ground and get fuel, or grow, you know, 5 acres of peanuts. So the corporations got control of the oils and the patents and so forth, and now we've forgotten that you could just run vegetable oil on a diesel engine, but it's the same diesel engine. We haven't modified ours a bit, and we put over 20,000 miles on a truck. It works.
Forest gardening is an attempt to mimic natural forests with combination of plants such as bulbs, herbs, shrubs, trees, and vines. These plants are chosen for their value as medicine, food, flowers, and biodynamic accumulators. The intention is to meet human needs by developing a self-perpetuating perennial system comparable to the biblical Garden of Eden.
But right off the bat, this is what we more or less call a forest garden. Edible forest garden. Here, black locust, another heart nut, black locust. What the heck? Left this service berry right here. Here's some elderberry.
right there, elderberry. And then just pop them in the ground. I need to cut this beech back. And then put newspaper around them and let them get established. And at some point along here, we'll come back in and we'll reclip all this brush down and cardboard the whole thing. And then the next year we'll come back and we'll plant, I don't know, rhubarb and lemon balm and lupins. And it's really low maintenance for high reward for us. Like I said, these plants are very vigorous. You see how large these leaves are. They look almost like a tropical plant. And so they're preventing this grass from growing under the base of our mallow plant, of our pear plant. So they are in fact providing year after year this leaf material. They're bringing up nutrients and putting it there on the ground for the pear to utilize. So this is a symbiotic relationship we're trying to create here, and one that is perennial in nature, that doesn't necessarily need a lot of day-to-day work and attention, but will give us greater and greater rewards year in and year out. You see this elecampane starting to seed some more. That's fine by me. Spread this right around. A little flick. And so that, as well as we go, will be an example of sort of what we got going on with the polyculture of plants that are edible and useful for us. It's more or less like traditional landscaping, except for each plant has a purpose. Not like a rhododendron or azalea just for looks. This is more like, well, I want to eat them nuts, and I want to use this chokecherry to augment the jam, and the echinacea planted over there we're going to make medicine with. You know, this is what it's. So it's farming like that, and more of a perennial style. Because the great thing about perennials and so forth, you know, that peach tree is just going to get bigger and better every year. Same with the hazelnut, same with the chokecherry. That's how perennials work. So it's a longer term investment. You know, I've just seen, you know, first butternuts, my first black walnuts off trees we planted nearly 15 years ago. But I'm optimistic, you know, in 50 years there'll be bushels of the things. And so it's a different kind of investment. Our philosophy is to approach animal husbandry as a mutually beneficial relationship. Our animals have access to fresh air, sunshine, and green grasses. In exchange, the animals cultivate and fertilize our gardens. Pigs and chickens provide a food source, while the oxen do the heavy lifting on the farm. Instead of people getting out there and clearing the land, or a tractor doing this kind of work, we're using the pigs to do it. The oxen primarily come in to take down the trees, and just be cautious because this electric fence is high. Oh. But the idea is to bring the oxen in, get our firewood, get our building materials, get the woody material we need for the bedding, the chips. And so, but look at these animals. You see their noses? They've been working all day. Busy. Busy. While we were in there eating breakfast, these guys were turning over this field for us. Because we're going to want a garden in here, so we talked to them about it, and we said, you guys, we want to move in here and do some gardening. We want you to turn the rocks and fertilize the field, you know, and eat all the weeds and stuff. And they said, okay. It's just like that. You just have to talk this stuff through. And they're willing. They really like to work. I don't know why everybody doesn't work with their animals like this. And what they do is they just poop everywhere and clean out the vegetation. They're building up the biomass. We come up here, oh golly, at least once a week with a pickup load, if not more, of weeds and so forth that we're just incorporating into them and incorporating into the soil, going through their digestive system and building soil with them. That's anything. I just like people to check out the color of the soil. Like other spots, the chickens have lived in here since we got here, and the pigs and goats have lived in here, and it's just a different color soil. It's a different tilt. The soil, if you get in there and start poking around, it's loose soil,
foot to 18 inches deep, which is just not very common on this property. And it's all through the process of bringing years and years and years of weeds over here for the chickens to eat and the pigs to eat and the goats and whatnot. And then all that biomass, all that organic material slowly metabolizing, making its way down the hillside and turning into soil. Chickens, I've been amazed how much territory they can actually keep denuded. If that's your goal, they can do quite a bit of space.
The natural tendency of the chicken is to seek forage through pecking and scratching the ground.
Yeah. Oh, no,
They're doing
definitely.
chicken yoga. See?
But they have the so the chickens, you can totally tell from one side of the fence to the other as well. They're doing their job. How much biomass have we thrown in here over the years? Lots of branches. You see, it won't be nothing like that in the fall. It'll be duff. It'll be just like soil. They just have at it. This is all they do all day is peck at stuff and climb around things. It's like their little jungle gym, but all day. It's also really good to eat when you get hungry.
Yeah.
Which is part of it. You know, there is a cycle that we're trying to observe, and we try to be as respectful as possible. These animals are our livelihood.
A team of oxen are the traditional draft animals of New England agriculture. We utilize Henry and August to pull timbers, spread manure, and move heavy loads such as rocks. Their manure is an essential ingredient in our soil building program.
You know, where they take people and they put people in front of bulls and the bulls run them down, and they have like bullfights and stuff where people go in there with swords. These guys are gentle and kind, and you can work with them, and they're not aggressive and violent. They're not driven to that, and it's because they don't have testosterone. And it's a real lesson for humanity as well, because there's a lot of problems caused by testosterone and letting that affect your judgment. So right in here, if people want to go explore this facility, this is what we call the G-Animal. And it's a combination of a greenhouse and an animal house. And so on this side is the greenhouse on the southern side of things. And it's all built out of materials that were sourced here locally on site, all the wood, except for the roofing. And then as we talked about earlier, we did use some concrete on a rubble trench foundation around the perimeter. The combination of this is with the G-Animal element, right? So the chickens live in there. We're probably going to bring some ducks and live in the basement. We raised pigs in there and turkeys before. So it's like a mutualistic relationship. You're trying to stack functions in one building. Because you know, you're going to have to go check the animals and you're going to have to check the greenhouse. Why not put them in the same place? They both, you know, it's nice to have your chickens and your pigs and stuff warm. You know, so there's that combination. Right. But anyway, there's an aerobic relationship going on here. Where the animals are breathing out what? You guys remember this from biology. What do animals breathe out?
Carbon dioxide.
Carbon dioxide. What do plants breathe in?
Carbon dioxide.
What do plants breathe out?
Oxygen.
So there's something going around and around. Alright, so what else happens? They both need water. So you gotta have water out here. They both need pretty regular attention. They both like it warm and sunny. So you got that combination thing. You don't see any negative drawbacks. We could actually, at the end of the season, take the weeds or whatever from here and throw them to the chickens. Or we could bring the chickens in here and they could root and toot and poop and do their thing. But it's a nice combination. There's synergy there in nature. These things would live together normally. In monoculture and like conventional agriculture, they just want to put everything in rows and grow 10,000 acres of just one thing. But here, we want to mix it all up like it is in nature. It's an opportunity for us as a farm to value add our food products. Like selling a pound of kale,
you're not going to get maybe $4 for it. And you got to take it to market. You got to deal with plastic bagging it up and weighing it and all that. Whereas if we come in and cut some kale and serve it for dinner that evening to some visitors from the bed and breakfast, they get the exposure to fresh vegetables. They can see where it came from. They get all that education. Plus, we can charge $10, $12 for dinner. It's a lot more money than we're going to get from trying to wholesale retail kale. It's the same thing with the eggs or potatoes or anything else that we could sell at a breakfast event such as we just had. And it's better quality food for the people that would normally be going out to eat breakfast somewhere. You know, we can give them the opportunity to have this high quality food. So it's a model for working farm in some respects and a model for community living in some respects, and just throwing it all into this big mixture.
With this piece of wood, this is a piece of rotten apple. This was an apple tree that was falling down that we pruned quite heavily to try to rejuvenate. You can tell actually some of this wood is really soft. It's spalting, which is a nice way of saying it's rotten. So this piece of wood though on the commercial market is really worth pennies. But for us, you know, we have these tools in here, and we have people that are willing to learn about woodworking, and so what can we do? Well, we could cut it into slats in this case, so cut it into slats and carve out a little mouth for a spoon. But you could carve out, say out of this piece of wood, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 20 spoons. And you could probably get, here's about $10 to $20 per spoon. So this piece of wood could actually, you know, its actual worth could be a couple $100 if you put the right creativity into it with the right facilities. And that kind of value adding is really what the natural resource utilization should be about. You want to get the most return from your resources, your available resources. So if you can figure out a way to turn a piece of rotten firewood into $200, that is very advantageous. And people can also learn along the way, you know, the different tools and the different skills it takes to create such a thing out of wood. I mean, drying is so important to our concept of non-electrical food preservation. If we get, you know, food preservation, if you just get into freezing stuff, it's great for ice cream, but anything else that comes out of the freezer really isn't as good as it was before it went in the freezer. Really, I can't think of anything that I like better frozen. So it's really my last option as far as flavor. It's one of my last options as far as nutrient quality. And it's definitely my last option as far as electrical use. It's just killing us on electrical use. So we're trying to get away from the freezer and moving more towards canning, dehydrating, smoking, just looking at the whole gamut that's non-electrically powered. Well, down here in the basement is where we've been storing stuff. This is basically a lot of the things that were canned. So you have peaches and beans and so forth, and garlic scapes. But down here is where we've been storing different herbs that we're looking to get together and make a tea out of. These were dried in the upstairs of the barn, as well as the dehydrator. It's like a walk-in cooler, so with modern analogy. So within a couple generations, we more or less forgot what root cellars are. I mean, we bring school groups down here, and I don't even think they've heard the two words together. But root cellar is a very important traditional means of preserving food, and it's more or less a refrigerator. The refrigerator itself is the earth. What you do is you basically just dig down far enough to get below the frost level, and then you have a root cellar. You're looking for it not to freeze in here, but to get just above freezing. 38 to 42 degrees is optimal. 42 is your typical refrigeration temperature, Works really good for us down here, just to turn off our refrigerator in November and bring our stuff down here, and we set up coolers on this table and mark them, you know, so we can tell which cooler has different stuff in it, and it's super way of storing your food, and we get until probably April out of it, and then stuff starts to get a little funky in here, get some warm days in the spring. But the concept is really that's nearly a 50% reduction in your refrigeration energy requirement. Like being able to shut the unit off for half of the year is a huge advantage. I mean 50% reductions are of the order that we need, and really it's inconvenient until you get used to it. But we also store root crops in here, so potatoes, carrots, turnips, rutabagas, apples as well. We're storing just, you know, keeper apples. The winter squash, garlic, that sort of stuff actually goes upstairs.
Permaculture design certification is obtained through completion of a curriculum-based 72-hour course. At DAcres, the Permaculture Through the Seasons design certification course is offered 1 weekend per month, April through November. Participants learn permaculture techniques and philosophy through lectures, tours, and practical design. This is an opportunity for students to develop a design for a particular location of their choice. Permaculture applications extend beyond small farm systems. Designs can be implemented for municipalities, schools, hospitals, homesteads, and governments as society at large strives towards a sustainable future. Steve Whitman of Plymouth and Keith Morris of Vermont are the course instructors. Please contact DAcres for further information. Development aimed at creating a rural ecological society. Founded in 1997, DAcres is a nonprofit organic permaculture farm and educational homestead. Through practice and experimentation, we endeavor to evolve sustainable systems for humanity. Our focus areas include forestry, animal husbandry, organic gardening, earth and construction, natural resource-based cottage industry, as well as culinary arts and food preservation. Overnight accommodation, hands-on workshops, and community food events provide regular opportunities for the public to learn and interact on the farm. We also host resident interns and apprentices as active participants in the organization. Visit www.DAcres.org for further information. Observe and interact. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. By taking the time to engage with nature, we can design solutions that suit our particular situation. But unless we get out there and open our eyes and use our hands and our hearts, all the ideas in the world will not save us. Thus, the thinking and design revolution, of which permaculture is a part, only makes sense when it reconnects us to the wonder and mystery of life through practical interaction. Catch and store energy. Make hay while the sun shines. By developing systems that collect resources when they are abundant, we can use them in times of need. In this permaculture principle, we use the laws of nature and mimicry of natural systems to concentrate energy, thus creating biological abundance. We need to restore the ethic of long-term asset building for the benefit of future generations. Obtain a yield. You can't work on an empty stomach. Ensure that you are getting truly useful rewards as part of the work that you are doing. This involves a shift from consumers to producers, from consumption to production. The principle utilizes a corrected balance sheet that reflects realistic inputs and outputs, which results in a true evaluation of the efficiency of systems. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback. The sins of the fathers are visited on the children of the seventh generation. This principle deals with self-regulatory aspects of permaculture design that limit or discourage inappropriate growth or behavior. With better understanding of how positive and negative feedbacks work in nature, we can design systems that are more self-regulating, thus reducing the work involved in repeated and harsh corrective management. This is a process of empowering ourselves, which enables us to contribute to a more balanced and harmonious world, capable of continuing to support life and humanity. Use and value renewable resources and services. Make the best use of nature's abundance to reduce our consumptive behavior and dependence on non-renewable resources. The proverb, "Let nature take its course," reminds us that human intervention and complication of processes can make things worse, and that we should respect and value the wisdom of biological systems and processes. We need to recognize that sustainable systems are more likely to emerge from an intimate partnership with nature, rather than the application of natural design principles within the confines of the technosphere. Thus the slogan, "Nature knows best," is appropriate. Produce no waste. By valuing and making use of all the resources that are available to us, nothing goes to waste. The proverb, "Waste not, want not," reminds us that it is easy to be wasteful when there is an abundance, but that this waste can be the cause of later hardship. A stitch in time saves 9 reminds us of the value of timely maintenance in preventing waste and work involved in major repair and restoration efforts. Design from patterns to details. Can't see the forest for the trees. By stepping back, we can observe patterns in nature and society. These can form the backbone of our designs, with the details filled in as we go. Complex systems that work tend to evolve from simple ones that work. So finding the appropriate pattern for that design is more important than understanding all the details of the elements in the system. Integrate rather than segregate. By putting the right things in the right place, relationships develop between those things, and they work together to support each other. Permaculture can be seen as part of a long tradition of concepts that emphasize mutualistic and symbiotic relationships over competitive and predatory ones. The proverb, "Many hands make light work," reminds us of the intangible benefits from collective rather than solitary action, as well as the more general synergistic nature of integrated systems in which the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. In building sustainable systems, permaculture design tells us that each element must perform many functions, and each important function is supported by many elements. Use small and slow solutions. Small and slow systems are easier to maintain than big ones, making better use of local resources and produce more sustainable outcomes. The proverb, "The bigger they are, the harder they fall," is a reminder of one of the disadvantages of size and excessive growth. The proverb, "Slow and steady wins the race," is one of many that encourages patience while reflecting a common truth in nature and society. In simple energetic terms, a given energy supply can support a large mass moving slowly or a small mass moving fast, but not both. If energy availability rises, systems can grow in size and increase in speed of movement. If energy availability diminishes, systems must shrink or slow down or do both. Use and value diversity. The great diversity of forms, functions, and interactions in nature and humanity are the source for evolved systemic complexity. Diversity reduces vulnerability to a variety of threats and takes advantage of the unique nature of the environment in which it resides. The proverb, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket," embodies the common sense understanding that diversity provides insurance against the vagaries of nature and everyday life. Use edges and value the marginal. On planet Earth, coastal ecosystems are amongst the most diverse and ecologically productive zones on this planet. As the boundary between Earth and sky, soil is also a boundary edge that is very productive in our ecosystem. Whatever the object is of our attention, we need to remember that it is at the edge of anything, system, or medium that the most interesting events take place. Design that sees edge as an opportunity rather than a problem is more likely to be successful and adaptable. Don't think that you are on the right track just because it is a well-beaten path. Creatively use and respond to change. This principle has two threads: designing to make use of change in a deliberate and cooperative way, and creatively responding or adapting to large-scale system change that is beyond our control or influence. We can have a positive impact on inevitable change by carefully observing and then intervening at the right time. Vision is not seeing things as they are, but as they will be.